As a young person, you sort of fight and you think something is going to change. But the older you get more complex issues, and then you have to strategize differently. I feel that the work has actually made me more confident. It has modeled me into um, the person, the activist, the human being that I very much wanted to be. My name is Pepe Julian Onziema. I am from Kampala, Uganda. I work with an organization called Sexual Minorities Uganda, SMUG. I work as the director of programs. My work is around sexual and gender minority work, LGBTIQ plus advocacy to restore dignity, for people to be able to live their lives, to be able to access social welfare in the country and be able to compete in political spaces and be able to live as human beings and citizens of my country, Uganda. There are snippets of things I used to do as a child and a young adult, basically fighting for people who are unable to fight for themselves, taking actions that were against any form of oppression. But the political work started when I was 15. I'm over 40 now. And it was in high school. There were young people who were sent out of school, homophobia, really. And the newspapers were already writing things like suspected for homosexuality or recruitment in homosexuality, which was a bit of a very unusual language. But because I came from a home that supported me, I actually faced and saw homophobia outside of my home. I wrote an article to the newspaper that had outed these young people of my age, 15, 16, basically 14, 15, 16. And I got angry enough, I took action. And later on, I learned that my actions were, called human rights defense or fighting for human rights. Yeah, so it started that way back. As a young person, you sort of fight and you think something is going to change. But the older you get more complex issues, and then you have to strategize differently. I feel that the work has actually made me more confident. It has modeled me into the person, the activist, the human being that I very much wanted to be. Political activism in the country began in the late 90s, 98, 99, then the early 2000s, when we would meet at a bar and just talk about our lives and make friends, and then we go home. But the more we convened, the more people started coming out and breaking down about the issues they were facing in their homes or in their schools based on their sexual orientation and gender identity. So then we had to now think, how do we stop these things from happening to us? We had to look into legal things. We had to look into access to health. We now really became intentional and said, how can we make the change that we really want to experience for our country to be able to be accommodative of our differences and diversities. So in 2004, my organization, SMUG, then formed as a coalition. And at that time, we were a loose entity that wanted to raise public health issues, especially around HIV and AIDS, because we had learned that our country was applying for funds with Global Fund, and there was a component that was actually supposed to give services to the community. So we wrote a public letter to the president and UNAIDS at the time. And there were 10 different groups that came together, and then we formed Sexual Minorities Uganda. We started looking into advocacy really intentionally, like what can we change? What policies can we change? Um, Most of us had been kicked out of schools. We taught each other what the law said, the Constitution said. We started reading different things around the world just to educate ourselves to be able to get into those spaces and advocate with authority and with confidence. As that happened, we also needed to document what we were going through. So we took on a component of research and documentation. And as we got visible, the backlash really hit so hard. So we took a fourth component, which was safety and protection, safety, security, and protection. We started off as two staff, two advocates who are working. Now we've grown to a team of 14. But of course, we are 14 because we are really limited by resources, but we work with volunteers across the country. The team is as big as 50. There are people who volunteer, there are people who come as peers, and so on. Yeah, and the activism has really grown even outside of Uganda. So then we started getting into spaces like in Kenya, in Tanzania, in South Africa, then the United States, Sweden, and we just took our work globally. And the aim for us was really for solidarity and us recognizing that we are not in this fight alone. And for us, I think it was intentional that the world speaks about what's going on in Uganda because we are such a small, landlocked country, and it's very easy for people to forget us. So we made sure that we were covering as much ground as possible. And we're not only working with partners in the United States or in Europe, but also locally. We were working with people from the African Commission. These are government elected people. We were lobbying people and advocating at the UN level, within the East African region also at that level. The most important thing is that we centered Uganda, but we also centered communities. Communities in the sense that not just the LGBT community, but where LGBTIQ people live, to make sure that their landlords are treating them better while we are chasing international leaders, our own leaders, we're also at the grassroots. We still go to the grassroots. We're still talking to a market person. We're still talking to people's parents. We're talking to some people's teachers, just to create an understanding that in case you came or you come across someone like this is how you treat them. Just that basic humanity to each other. So as much as this propaganda is there, there's a handful of people who believe in our work, who believe in who we are. Some don't even have children or relatives that they know that are queer, but they believe in humanity. So, and some of them are placed in high places where they're able to at least move the needle a bit. I think that has really helped us. When we started, we used to share a lot of things. There was community resourcing. The movement was resourced by the movement. When we started organizing ourselves in sort of NGO format, that meant we became more dependent on donor funding, which right now, as we speak, funds are very scarce. So maybe the thing I would have changed is that we should have continued with that community, maybe for lack of a better word, that community philanthropy, and grown that part instead of abandoning it and thus going with the system that we are in right now. So building social capital within, I think, is one of the things that is really important. Because in 2022, when my organization was shut down, and myself and my director and I there was a whole smear campaign on social media, in local media, that like there was an arrest warrant for both of us, but we never got arrested. The threats, to date, we live with those threats, but it's not as much as it was between 2022 and 2023, because the law had been passed, the Anti-Homosexuality Act had been passed. So you can imagine having to live with such intense, terrifying fear. It sounds exaggerated, but that was how intense it was. And not even being able to sit, within a space and eat. You have to danger was just so imminent, death was imminent, arrest was so imminent. But we kept on speaking our truth to power. The same local media where people are saying nasty things about us, we went to the same media to try, and it was exhausting. It's really exhausting. But we got to a point where we also just ignored, you know, different tactics we were using. Some of the things we totally ignored. We say we are not going to deal with that. We are not going to speak to that. You don't know whether they actually want to hear from you or they want to attack you. So some spaces we totally ignored. So probably one, to remain grounded within your community. To spread the risk. Let at least a number of people know what you're going through, so that when there's an SOS that comes, there are people who can come to your aid, not physically, in any way that they can. Thirdly is really to have your own security plan. The people might have a security plan for you, but the main security plan that can save your life is your own. So having that is very important. And the solidarity is also really, really important, because usually the people who are against us, the key thing they want to do is isolate you. Isolate you either as a group or isolate you as an individual. So it's very easy to fall into that trap and become isolated, and you become actually more vulnerable, and they can easily take you out. So it's to remain at least within community, trusted community, make that, as your plan, a small community that you can still rely on, and they can come to your aid. But also keep speaking to people, regulate your media content intake, find safer platforms, or even if you're on those toxic platforms and you feel you don't want to leave, create a community within there that you're able to circle back or lean back on. If you're not totally depressed or burnt out, find happy moments. Like for me, I would take nice selfies and post them on Instagram. And I'm like, if they are going to pick anything off my social media, at least I'll be looking good and I'll be smiling. I work out. Might sound cliche, but I do. I walk. It's not very safe to walk, but I have some hours when it's not too isolated and it's not too busy, because people know my face and somehow they still recognize me. I talk to a couple of people, but I also take time to just be with myself, just me alone and my thoughts. I find that it works so well for me when I'm able to take, even if it's an hour, because there's so much work to do. Somehow you can't afford to take a whole day or 2 days. So I designate at least an hour in a day to just be with myself. I practice meditation. Um, but also I have nieces and nephews who check on me, and just talking to them and trying to see the world through their eyes is very rejuvenating. So those are the things that keep me going. The other bit, I think, is just watching the younger people who are my age at the time I started the work, and how things are so different, and just seeing the urgency and the quest for freedom, and just living their lives like there's no law. You know that saying, dance like no one is watching? So like that really gives me joy and gives me hope to move on, because they're young people just reminding me of, that reckless, not reckless in a bad way, but that carefree kind of life and just living your life. So the young people also give me hope and give me strength to continue doing the work. We've been through so much that we've learned from. So feel free to reach out to people like myself, Frank, and other LGBT activists here in Africa. Um, it it will change the way you probably get through things in your own country. Thirdly, keep fighting back. Don't give up, keep fighting back. Their work is really to isolate us and make us give up, but we mustn't give up. And the only way we cannot give up is if we can rely on each other for strength, because alone we cannot go alone. We have to keep fighting together. Yeah.